Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
How
are
hear me
you?
good, yeah?
Yeah, great. Can you hear us?
Yeah, very
Good.
clear.
Very good.
How are
Awesome.
you?
Good. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Or thanks for being with us.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
was
that.
going to say, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. No worries at all. Is it about 6:30 at night where you are?
It's 5:30, so I'm working from my home just for the few hours, really. So
Nice.
just to make sure I was back at home on time, but
Sure.
5:30 here. So almost clocking off time.
Yeah.
I wish.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm Anthony. This is Matt.
Hi, Anthony and Matt. How are you doing?
Very good.
Good. We usually have a third with us, Troy, but he just had his hip replaced last week, so he's kind of healing up. Yeah, I can't really be drinking on that stuff, obviously.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
You gotta give it a rest for a wee while.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I thought whiskey cures everything though.
Well, not when you're on the other stuff that
Yeah.
we're prescribing them, obviously. Well, yeah, I think when I initially emailed you, I told you my wife and I went to Belfast probably 3 or 4 years ago. I should know it because it was for our anniversary. I should really know that. But
I won't tell her.
yeah. But literally, I mean, and we spent 5 days in Belfast, and then we spent 4 days in Dublin. And I think the second we got to Dublin, we were like, man, we should have just stayed in Belfast the whole week.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Dublin is just like the New York City of Ireland for, you know, big cities.
Very busy, very busy, but
but
and it's Dublin and Belfast are surprisingly close to each other. If you drive an hour and a half from Dublin, you get to Belfast. So I think people are surprised when they think about how close things in Ireland are, that you can just do that little drive.
Yeah.
But it's also incredible how things changed so dramatically when you get an hour and a half outside of Dublin, you get to Belfast. They're two very different cities. But they're both wonderful, beautiful cities. Like I love Dublin as well, but it's just I'm from Belfast, so I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah.
So you grew up there? You've been there your entire life?
Yes, I was born in Belfast, and I have a family. Like I have 6 sisters and 1 brother, large family. And I've always lived in Belfast and went to school and also university just outside of Belfast. So it's somewhere that's really close to my heart. And also I just absolutely adore the people in my city, and just even the way that they've welcomed me with open arms when it comes to working with whiskies too, because it's a wonderful growing market, but it's incredible how even 2 years ago, during the pandemic, how much Belfast got behind McConnell's and behind me too. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, you've been to Belfast and you've met some people when you come to the city, and people from here love a good story. They also love some history, and they love to connect themselves to the city. So McConnell's does all of that, and it ticks all of those boxes.
Was the whiskey boom as big? So I know here, obviously in the States, the bourbon boom and whiskey boom has been insane. Is it kind of the same over there as well?
Yeah, I mean, the Irish whiskey industry is just been absolutely crazy over the past 5 years. About 5 or 6 years ago, there was only a handful of distilleries. There was brands coming. There was almost like this feeling of a renaissance in Irish whiskey. There was plans for distilleries. There was some gins coming. The gin market was starting to boom, and then that followed with now there's 46 distilleries in Ireland, and there was only at one stage 3. So that has really increased. Now, when I said 3, I'm talking 3 in modern times. Like in the past, Ireland was huge for Irish whiskey and for whiskey. But that sort of went into decline for a good number of years. And then now this renaissance is happening. You're seeing a lot of these brands coming. You're seeing bottlers and bonders, which is something that was huge in Ireland back in the 1800s. So a lot of the bars would actually bottle their own whiskies and bond their own whiskies and bring it out as their own brands. And you're starting to see that come back into the tradition. because you're seeing brands that aren't going to necessarily build a distillery, but they're going to bring out their own brands. And then you also get the ones like our brand, where we are building a distillery and we're trying to bring a distilling tradition back to the city of Belfast. And that's incredibly exciting for us. Because yeah, you said you were in Belfast. I don't know whether you noticed at the time. You're like a whiskey lover. There is no distillery here.
I was wondering if I missed it. I was going to ask you. It's like, we drank all over that city. Anywhere you could drink, I drank there.
There's a lot of places to drink there, I'm sure. Yeah.
And just to go back to what you were saying, and as far as Irish people, they love a good story and all that. They are, first and foremost, you all are the nicest people. I mean, we come from America, so that might be saying something, but you guys are the nicest people. Not only do they love a good story and they love being nice, they also like to drink. I obviously learned that too. So it's probably fitting that a distillery is in the middle of that city as well. So this is obviously a new operation then, as far as the distillery being open there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we actually relaunched McConnell's. McConnell's is an old brand from 1776, which is a wonderful date for you guys in America.
Yeah.
But it also, shows that Belfast was very focused on industry, like the linen mills, the shipbuilding. We built the Titanic. We also were the biggest producer of Irish whiskey before Cork and Dublin as well. And the McConnell's brand, traded right up until the 1930s, and it was a massive player. They had their own distillery, their Cromac distillery, which was also a brewery, and it was a huge production. And they also went through some hardships. They had a large fire. They had a fire at the distillery, and then they had a fire in a bonded warehouse, which destroyed 500,000 gallons of their whiskey stock, which is just
huge.
Yeah,
devastating.
Yeah. Even back in the early 1900s, the insurance companies were really affected even by that. That was a huge blow to business, but they did rebuild and they got back up on their feet, and they traded right up until the mid 1940s. Actually, is when the company eventually wrapped up. So back in 2017, there was just this project started to come together, and we were thinking about revival brands, and we thought, let's bring back McConnell's Irish whiskey, because there's still a large footprint for McConnell's in the city, and also to bring back a brand with such heritage too. So the product was launched in 2020, March 2020, which is a tough time for anyone to really launch a product. But it was with we launched the product before the distillery was built. And that was to try to reintroduce the brand back to the city, and a way to start to communicate what our future plans are going to be. And we are building a distillery. It's a state-of-the-art distillery in North Belfast, and it will be number one, a distillery, but also a visitor centre tourist attraction. We'll have a cocktail lounge and a blending experience. So it will be wonderful for Belfast City to have a distillery. But until then, we still have our products, and we actually have a new product coming out on the 12th of May. So it is a sourced whiskey, like a lot of the brands in Ireland, because it is such a booming industry. It's an old industry, but it's quite new at the same time, because you're aware whenever you create a whiskey and the spirit comes off the stills, you need to age it. Mm-hmm. And in Ireland, you have to age your whiskey for at least 3 years to call it an Irish whiskey. Sure. And a lot of brands would age it for a little bit longer. So a lot of brands would then source their whiskey from other distilleries and then put their product out there. So McConnell's 5-year-old, which we have today, is a product that yes, we don't have the distillery yet, but it's just to show you what's to come. Sure. And to introduce the brand back into the market and into the city.
And how far out is the distillery from being done, you think? Or do you have a time frame at all?
Yeah, we should really be opening in the summer of 23. Now that seems like a long time away, but it really isn't. We have lots to do before then.
Yeah, you'll wake up and it'll be the next year, like, oh, what's going on?
That's it. Like a few of us are still kind of waking up in 2019 and not
exactly
what's happened. So it will pass pretty quickly.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, I mean, next time I know me personally, when I'm there, I'm definitely going to get in contact with you. We will absolutely come out there. That is on our list to be there often. In general in Belfast, we just loved, like I said, loved it so much. So cocktails wise, we actually, obviously there's a lot of whiskey in this room. You can probably see some of it. But we also dive into cocktails quite a bit on here as well. I see you posting a lot of stuff with cocktails too. And I mean, when I was in Belfast, there wasn't really like much of a cocktail scene. Everyone's like, shot in a beer type, and I was like, well, that sounds good to me. I'm on vacation. I don't care. 9 a.m. Let's do it. But are you guys, so I think you did mention you're going to have some sort of cocktail lounge at the distillery when it launches.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the distilleries now, especially the Irish whiskey industry is moving as well.
Yeah.
The whiskey is moving. It's now becoming a lot more versatile. People, it's for all the consumers. And a cocktail is a great way to introduce people into Irish whiskey. It's also a good way to enjoy whiskey, and you're not sitting with a dram neat and sipping over a whiskey, which is wonderful. I do it all the time.
Yep.
But just if you want to try something different, a cocktail is a great way to do that. And so I do play around a lot with cocktails with our 5-year-olds blend. And it is because there's just such like light, crisp notes that really work well with the cocktails. And we do have some suggested serves. And as you said, what year was it? You said was it 3 years ago?
I think it was 2000. I think it was September of 2019 is when we came.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, even in the short few years, I used to work in hospitality like a number of years back. Now I'll not give away how long ago, but yeah, it wasn't as much of a cocktail scene, but that's definitely coming back. You're seeing that a lot more in like some real top mixologists. A lot of cocktail competitions where brands would introduce their product to bartenders and like literally give them the reins and let them see what they come up with. And also just for the cocktail scene, going out and drinking in bars, people like to go out and spend a little bit extra to get a really nice cocktail.
Sure.
Something that someone has spent a lot of time and effort, number one, coming up with the recipe and also preparing for that, because there's a lot of prep work when it comes to cocktails.
Yeah.
So have you got a favorite cocktail or a favorite?
I make it depends on what time of the day. It depends on what time of the day it is. I mean, you posted one, it might've been yesterday or so. It was kind of maybe like a take on a sour. We're thinking about making that on here maybe when we do the wrap up with our third, when he's healthy again. If you don't mind me stealing that from you, and obviously it's your cocktail. We're going to do it with this stuff too, but we have, we've actually yet to try this. We were hoping to try it with you.
Of course, like let's get the bottle open.
We have some experience with Irish whiskey. I know I brought a lot onto the podcast just to kind of try around, because it's something I didn't really get into all that much and probably until the last few months. So we've tried obviously a lot of the bigger brands and such. So I have not tried this at all, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of the bottle?
I love it. That was going to be if we don't like what's inside of it, the one compliment I was definitely going to give you is that the bottle is beautiful. I absolutely love it. I love the badge up here too with Belfast on it. Mm-hmm. Belfast, and for the listeners who don't realize this, I think Sarah said Titanic was built there. I mean, a huge industrial city dating back forever, where a lot of the larger ships and things like that. Titanic was also launched out of there. If you're Game of Thrones fans, most of the Game of Thrones stuff was all filmed there. Everyone I met was an extra. I don't know, Sarah, if you were or not on there.
He wasn't, but I did work during some of the wrap parties, and around that time, whenever each of the series is, you've seen a lot of the stars in and around the city. They drank very regularly in the bars.
Yeah, that's not surprising. The Airbnb we stayed at was kind of, on the same block of where that studio was down there. We actually saw them ripping down Winterfell because the show was obviously done at that point. But besides Game of Thrones and the Titanic, there's a lot of other stuff. You guys just have an awesome, unique history. So if anyone is interested, People in Ireland do more than just drink. That's kind of like the American stereotype over
No,
here.
the film industry is here is incredible.
Yeah.
There's lots being filmed in Belfast. And you said there about it being an industrial city. It really was. And even being a female, females played a large part in industry back in the 1800s. They would have worked in the linen mills. They also, like Eleanor McConnell, who was the John and James's mother, she was noted as a rectifying distiller in the 1800s, which is incredible. I just find it as a really good story for females in the industry too, that women helped shape that industry as well. And then also, sorry, my light is just actually died on me as just but what we'll do, we'll try it and talk through the whiskey as well, because the whiskey in the bottle is just wonderful.
It smells great.
Yeah, it's a little citrus and honey and what is the mash bill of this? Is it?
So this is a blended whiskey.
Okay.
So it's a blend of Irish grain and Irish malt whiskies. And it's 42% ABV, which is 84 proof. But it's aged in first fill ex-bourbon barrels. So, you do get a lot of the bourbon influence, but also the wood influence too. It's the mash bill. It's not really the same thing as the bourbon industry, because the categories are very different in Ireland, in that you have malted whiskey, which is made of malted barley, and then you have grain whiskey, which is made of other grains. So with McConnell's, it's a blend of Irish malt and Irish grain whiskies. So the mash bill wouldn't be the same as, I've actually learned a lot about bourbon in the past 2 years, and the maize, the 51% maize, and the mash bill is very unique to bourbon.
Yep.
Whereas with Irish whiskey, there's single malts, there's single grains, then there's blended whiskies, and then there's also a category that's unique to Ireland called pot still style whiskey, which is as a blend of malted barley and unmalted barley and other grains. So that would be more the categories and how you would define your whiskey. Okay. And our whiskey is a blended Irish whiskey.
Okay, so there's a blended Irish whiskey.
Malt and grain.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha. I wasn't sure because I don't think it doesn't say it specifically on the bottle.
It might not.
No, I mean, in Ireland, it would. What you do have to state on the bottles is mainly the category or the style of whiskey it is. So it's a blended whiskey. And then if you have a single malt, then it's a single malt. And the single malt means it comes from one distillery. So a single malt, you could have, a blended malt, which is two different types of malt from two different distilleries blended together. And then you can have single grain whiskey too. So it would say single grain, meaning that it comes from the same distillery. So there's just different definitions and categories in the Irish whiskey industry.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep. That's interesting that single malt means a malt from one single distillery. Here in America, there's been, at least the past couple of years, American single malt in general has been taken off as of recently. And there's been a lot of back and forth in legislation involving what actually to classify that as. What other legal what makes something besides that stuff? What actually makes something an Irish whiskey? We've actually talked about on here quite a bit. But what actually makes it an Irish whiskey?
Yeah, so the actual specifics like that have to be done there is that, that has to be aged in Ireland, and that has to be in a wooden cask. So it doesn't have to be oak. It has to be a wooden cask, which is why we can use ex-bourbon barrels, and why the market for ex-bourbon barrels is so big here in Ireland. And then you can also finish it in different casks, like PX cask, PX sherry, Oloroso sherry, red wine casks, rum casks. There's a lot of experimentation in the Irish whiskey industry. But what makes it Irish is it has to be fully aged in the island of Ireland. It also needs to be aged for at least 3 years. So you can't call it a whiskey until it's at least 3 years old. But, you can age it further. You don't have to put the age statement on the bottle. But if you do put the age statement on the bottle, like we did, which is a 5-year-old, the youngest spirit in this bottle is at least 5 years old. So there could be it could be, put some 7-year-old whiskey in there, but at least it has to be at least 5 years old. So all of the liquid inside this bottle has been aged for at least 5 years in the island of Ireland in a wooden cask. And in this instance, it's a bourbon cask.
Right.
Now there is some, you have pot still style whiskey, which is separate from this. This is a blended whiskey, and I could go on for days about different categories and the different GI and all of that. But really, that's the basics to Irish whiskey. And as well, like, we can use pot stills in our distillation process, but we can also use column stills. So it's not specific that it has to, that we use both in this category.
Right.
And as you said, there's rules with bourbon, and I know the general rules, but you could learn for days and days and days about the categories.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the basics of that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've been drinking while you're talking, and this is absolutely, I don't know how you feel about it, Matt, but it's absolutely delicious. The nose on it is fantastic. First and foremost.
Yeah, it's just really, I mean,
it's really fresh. It's a fresh, freshly cut fruit or melon, like breakfast fruits. You get vanilla, of course, because you get that from the bourbon influence, and also from the wooden casks, because it's a
really light oak too. It's not a really dense heavy oak. It's kind of more of the light and approachable oak.
Yeah.
On
the tongue,
and then on the palate as well, like it's something that develops slightly. You get that sort of mellow note at the start. It lingers on your palate. It's quite fresh, and you get the honey notes coming through. And the butterscotch. I don't know if you know what butter.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Butterscotch. And almost like maltiness, like the malted cookies that you would get. And then in the end, there's just a slight peppery note that just sort of hits the back of your tongue. And it's a spicy note that you would get from the wood and the age that you're getting, the 5 years that you're getting in the cask. It's a little bit more complex, and also because the Irish whiskey industry, has to be 40% ABV or 80 proof, but we've given it a little bit higher alcohol content there at 42%. So that also adds to the complexity in the whiskey and the length on your palate too.
Yeah, it's definitely when it first hits my palate, it definitely is like, oh, this is going to be really kind of just, I hate to use the word smooth, but it's going to be, pretty smooth. It's kind of just going to go and go away with like a pretty soft, mellow finish. But it really does. It changes right after it hits your palate. You get it kind of to the back, and you do get that kind of pepperiness in like the side back of the tongue a little bit.
Definitely get it on the sides. That butterscotch thing is really dominant too. I absolutely love this. As far as, so just a question, when you guys start putting your own stuff in bottles when the distillery opens, how do you envision, I mean, obviously you have a product. I think you said you're releasing a new product, which
we're releasing a new product actually tomorrow.
Yeah.
So say posted. Yeah, this will probably come out after that.
Yeah,
this
will probably come out next
Tuesday.
So if you want to tell us what it is.
If it comes out after, I can show you the bottle now if you want.
Yeah, this won't air until next week. Or
maybe next.
Okay.
That's why I'm wearing my red t-shirt today, as you know.
It's a little hint. I get it.
So this is our second release, and it is a 5-year-old like our last whiskey, but it is aged for 5 years in first fill bourbon casks, and then it's taken out of those bourbon casks and put into Oloroso sherry casks for 10 months.
That's red label always. Yep. That's perfect.
It gives the sherry away. It's also 46% ABV. So you're getting 92 proof. So you're getting a little bit extra in the bottle as well, and then on top of that, it's non-chill filtered. So you can probably see a little bit of the difference on my camera and color.
Yeah.
And hopefully get to try this as soon as this comes out. It will be in the American market next week.
Oh wow!
But we are launching.
We'll grab it. Yeah.
We're launching officially tomorrow, but it's just we try our best to get to every single market and to make sure our product's on time. It doesn't always work out on the exact date, but
wait, there's issues with shipping and distribution now. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been getting anything into the States has been a nightmare. So we'll take your word for it.
But it will be there. It will be there. It'll be
we're looking forward to it.
Available to the US market.
Yep. We love sherry finish stuff.
Yep.
Absolutely love it. So I will absolutely be
this is super. It's actually crazy because it's our blend, the same blend that goes into this bottle, but it's just got that little bit extra time in a sherry cask and also a higher alcohol content and non-chill filtered, and it's so crazy how it just changes it. You know, the tasting notes are very different. It's still fabulous whiskey, but just adds a lot of character to it, and you know, as soon as you try it, you'll understand what I mean by that.
Good, because I could see this adding a little bit of like almost a little bit of body and just a little bit of like darker fruit notes. I think that would be that would kind of round it out a lot.
Yeah.
So.
You get a lot of
but
dark fruits, but also dark chocolate and like a leathery note too that you would get with sherry. You know, it's hard to explain to you without having it in front of you and just having that conversation.
Sure.
But very, very close to having that with you guys.
Yeah,
so
that's exciting.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, 'cause I saw you post a hint about it, I think today or yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'm excited.
I mean, it's just a long time coming, and I think you were leading into the question is, you know, the company as it grows and having the distillery there, we'll very much continue on that journey that we've started with McConnell's. We will continue to be consistent and make sure that the blend that we have released will be the same unique recipe, the unique mash bill that we have put together, and the unique blend, because it's our signature. So that will continue when we have our distillery. And we're also building a malt distillery. So it will be a triple pot still distillery, and it will be malt that will be coming off our stills. So as I said before, when I was explaining about grain whiskies, we will still have to source our grain whiskey from another distillery for this product. So it's just crazy what you can do with the Irish whiskey industry. You know, people work together too. The distilleries work together because a lot of distilleries would either build, you know, a grain distillery or a malt distillery. So that's what we were building, a malt distillery, and then we'll have our own single malts too that will be coming from the distillery. Now that's a few years from now,
right,
because it has to age. So, you know, there could be bottles that will be coming off our stills that will be around whenever my daughter is my age. So
she can share it with you then. So
that's it. So it's super exciting. I think the whiskey world is super exciting. It's one of those things you have to be very patient.
Yeah.
And it takes time to make a great whiskey.
Good whiskey takes time. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I absolutely. This is going to be dangerous, Sarah. This will be gone within a week, I think.
And then you have a new bottle next week.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really good stuff.
It is cool to kind of hear that camaraderie, though. I mean, you get some of that in the States with sourcing, and there's some distilleries that will, you know, buy a spirit and then they'll barrel it and then they'll age it in their state essentially. But you don't get a ton of kind of what you're explaining is the collaboration where actually people will blend, you know, someone will make a grain and someone will make a malt or whatever and kind of come together and make that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think
there is a number of distilleries in Ireland. There's a few distilleries that would focus purely on making whiskey for other brands as well. So there's a huge industry that comes from whiskey sourcing, and then also distilleries that have been sourcing since the start and are building their own distilleries will still want to make blended whiskies. You see it in the Scotch industry all the time, that people still want to blend their whiskies because the blended category is very important. It brings versatility. It shows that you can bring a malt that maybe just isn't ready yet, or a malt that maybe is too ready and needs to be mellowed out a little bit. With blending is an incredibly complex
it's an art. Yeah,
it is an art, and only a few people can do it. There's a few people in the industry that really are top blenders. But it's wonderful what you can do and how you can change a whiskey whenever you blend 2 or 3 liquids together.
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's like a whiskey cocktail, kind of.
Perfect.
Yeah. That's a terrible way to put it.
Terrible. Do you guys, I'm assuming, is your head distiller or blender at this point?
Yeah, well, currently our blender is a guy called Roy Goodlad. He's worked with the company for a while now, but he is the one who would look through the recipes. Now it is a joint effort. We all sample different products and we all sample different strengths and as the process goes on. But he does the most of how much of grain goes in here, how much malt goes in, how long it has in the cask, is it ready yet? Cask sourcing, what goes into our next whiskey, because we do have other releases coming out.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So that side of the business is very exciting, but it's also it takes time and effort as well. It doesn't just happen, because you could choose a cask and it doesn't necessarily work. Hasn't happened yet, but it can always happen.
Yeah.
But like, I know you did put it to cocktails there, but there's people who train for years to be top mixologists, and they can do something that is like witchery, like they come up with this cocktail that's just fantastic. I've tried a few cocktails in my career where it's crazy what your nose can do as opposed to your palate. You can go on this experience. It's the same thing as whiskey, is that whiskey is very subjective. You don't always get exactly what someone else is getting on the nose, and you could get something completely different on your palate and your nose than you do the next day because of maybe what you've eaten that day, or
absolutely
how you feel, or how hydrated you are. So there's lots of elements in whiskey tasting. Even I've done a few exams and WSET's exams, and you have to be very you have to have a blank canvas in front of you. You can't have any aromas or coffee that day. You can't use really strong hand soap. There's all these factors that you have to put in place when you're tasting whiskey. So it's a interesting industry to be in.
Yeah. How did you get started in it? I don't think I asked you that earlier.
No. But it is what it is. It's an interesting story, and everyone's story is quite unique, especially in an industry like Irish whiskey, is that it is reviving. So people who are in it now maybe came from different backgrounds or came from other industries, and their skills have transferred into whiskey. So a bit like myself, I worked in hospitality as a student back in 2012. So from 2012, I left the hospitality industry in 2015, and I left after I graduated university, and I started in the finance industry. And so the finance industry is great. It's great industry to get into, especially when you're working with local businesses. So we worked with local businesses in terms of manufacturing and hospitality, haulage, logistics, all of those things. So you get a bit of a taste for all industries whenever I was working in finance. And so I was invited along to a launch party back in 2019 for the McConnell's, and I went along because I'm a whiskey enthusiast. I love whiskey, and just went along as a consumer and also a little bit of a corporate event. And I just got chatting to the guys who were starting the project and who were getting the product to market, and they were very enthusiastic, and really drew me in the story of Belfast and the story of this wonderful Belfast whiskey that was coming back, and we were going to start bringing the tradition back to the city. And I just found that very compelling, and I followed the brand for a few months, but I got a call, I got in contact, and they asked me, to come in and have a chat about just even my input on what McConnell's is in the industry, especially during the pandemic, whenever everyone was behind closed doors. And so they asked me to come aboard as their brand ambassador, someone who would work social media and also try to connect with the audience and the bartenders in the industry, and also to try to bring the history together and tie those little pieces together too, and tell the story. And I was just so enthusiastic about this offer, and I thought, of course, like, why not? You couldn't turn that offer down. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I just think that the brand is just going from strength to strength, and we have so much more to go. So it's very exciting. And that's
I think a good story turns a good whiskey into a great whiskey. I mean, honestly, it's
and we've been seeing that a lot recently too.
Yeah.
I would say, very, very, I would agree with you. Very strong brand. It's one thing to have a bottle that looks first and foremost as sexy as this. It is so appealing. Like, it would catch your eye on a shelf. But again, it doesn't matter. It's the juice that hits the lips type of thing, right? So it tastes just as good as what the bottle looks like. Obviously, I'm very excited to see, especially if we can find that sherry finished one.
Hopefully next week. We'll see.
I absolutely love
although our state is pretty slow to get things, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We live in Indiana, so we usually see things about a month or two after most places. So give us some time, but we'll definitely get our hands on it for sure.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, the bottle itself, as you were saying there, has history on it too. It's a beautiful bottle. I love it. It even just feeling it, it's quite heavy. It's got presence on a shelf. Also just, what was it?
Oh, sorry. I said, are all the harps and all the thing, are those specific to McConnell's, or are those more just kind of general Irish things? Or
that's the harp Bavarian there on the front that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But that harp was on the bottle way back in 1976 on the first brand. The label looks very similar. I think if you look at my Instagram, there's a few of the Instagrams. Like, we have a McConnell's Whisky Ireland page for the home market. We have the US page, and then we have my brand ambassador page. But the old labels are very similar to this. We tried to keep as much of the history as we possibly could, which is why there's some stories on the bottle. Like, the shape of the bottle is shaped like a pill capsule, and the story for that really is that down in the bottom here, where it says "Restoring the Legend," there was 3 recommendations on the bottle from doctors, and they recommended the spirit. So we weren't able to put that on the bottle anymore.
Right. Yeah. Doctor approved.
Those doctors aren't around. They're not around to recommend our whiskey anymore. But also, it's probably not the best. We weren't allowed to do it. And as much as we love those doctors, they're fantastic. It's a fantastic story. We then shaped the bottle like a pill capsule, just as a bit of a nod to it.
That's funny.
Then also, you did point out the Belfast Badge, and that is a nod to the shipbuilding and the docks of our city, which are the reason why our city is an industrial city. And then also, what was it, sorry?
Oh, sorry. I said even the cap is pretty awesome. It's got some weight to it. It's got I'm assuming there's strings like an instrument. I'm assuming like a harp on top, which is kind of cool. And
they're the strings of the harp.
Yeah.
So that's what that represents. And like everything, there's stories behind literally everything on the bottle. And they're just a few of the real ones that stand out for me, and the stories that I like to tell. And even the bottom of the bottle is shaped like a little cozy, like the opaque glass that you would find in a bar.
Yeah.
So I find it all really fascinating. And as we go and as we bring out new products, our bottles, the labels might change. We might change the bottle in the future, but this bottle I just see as it gives the brand an identity.
Sure.
Yeah, you got it for people walking by that don't know the brand or whatever. I mean, you have to have some shelf appeal to get just general consumers to grab it too. So yeah, for sure.
But the liquid inside also just is
right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I feel bad that I'm going to make a cocktail with it later. Honestly, it's good for just
whiskey's
sipping.
Meant to be drink, man.
It is.
Well,
yeah.
The cocktail that you were mentioning earlier, is it the Dunbar Street Sour?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's a cocktail that's named after one of the fires that I mentioned, the one where we lost 500,000 gallons of Irish whiskey. But it's more of a celebratory cocktail that we got back up on our feet after it. But it's a twist on a whiskey sour, but it's also a bit of a twist on a margarita. So if you like margaritas and you like whiskey sours, then you're definitely going to like the Dunbar Street Sour.
So when you were saying a sprinkle of salt, are you putting that in it at the end, or are you doing that before you're shaking it?
I put it in when I'm shaking it.
When you're
shake it all up together. Yeah,
Okay.
let that
Okay.
dissolve a little bit, so it gives you that. It if you take elderflower and you take lime, so elderflower is very bitter, and
Yeah.
then you get the lime. No, sorry, lime is very bitter. Elderflower is very sweet, the liqueur, and the salt just balances it really well. So
A whiskey margarita.
I'm excited to try this.
So to speak. Yeah, I'm very excited to try it. Yeah, again, I kind of feel bad mixing it in, but I think
Don't feel bad.
No, I mean,
got to drink it.
It's made to be drank. Well, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on here.
Thank you so much for having me. You know, I love to talk about McConnell's. I also love to talk about Belfast City, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. We'll have to have you back on maybe, sooner than later, but hopefully when that distillery opens up, maybe we can
take this international.
Yeah, we'll do an international podcast. Any excuse I have to get back to Belfast. I will.
Wait, this entire podcast was created just to go back to Belfast.
No, it was not. It was not. But
do the podcast from the distillery.
We've been talking. We've been talking about that for a while.
We should do a remote one. That would be fun. Well, yeah, guys. If you guys see this in the stores, pick it up. It's priced affordably. It tastes delicious. They got a new release coming. Check that out too. McConnell's Irish Whiskey on Instagram too. You can follow Sarah as well. She makes some good drinks. I've seen her do that a bunch.
Do you want to shout out your handles and Instagram stuff?
It's McConnell's _Irish_whiskey is mine. And it's without the E, because we don't spell whiskey without the E. We're one of the only Irish brands who don't, and it's because we are such an old brand. And then the McConnell's Irish Whiskey is at McConnell's Irish Whiskey without the E is the Instagram page too.
Awesome. Well,
you can find us on Twitter as well, for just Belfast Distillery Company Limited, or at McConnell's _BDC, and that's because that's the name of our distillery and the name of our company.
Perfect. Okay.
Well, we do something at the end of this podcast. I don't know if we put you on the spot and do this. I don't know if you've watched the podcast at all, but we do a yodel at the end of every podcast. I don't know if you want to join in on that with us.
Do you not
a yodel? Wow,
like a yodel, like a yodel, like one of those.
Yeah, we usually do like a little cheers.
Voice like a crow.
That's fine. Me too. Would you be willing to join us?
I can try. Yeah.
All right. If we're gonna do a little cheers for us, if you have any left, there you go.
Don't you?
Yeah. Perfect. We'll do a little countdown. If you want to do a 3, 2, 1, then we'll yodel and we'll take a cheers. Ready?
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Yodelay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That was the worst. That was actually.
It's totally fine.
Oh man,
it gets better. It gets better every time.
We've had worse on here. Trust me.